Hello, Isaac. I am very glad to have you in this interview today as a guest. Thank you for saying yes and for being with us. This I Am series of interviews is meant to present you very different original people from all over the world, and also to invite you to help the Romanian hospital. So if you find anything useful and insightful in our conversation today, please click the link and donate an amount of money to help the hospitals and to better the situation in Romania today. Thank you so much for being here, and I will just dive into our interview and challenge you to tell the important part of yourself in 30 seconds. Who are you, Isaac?
30 seconds. Wow. All right. First of all, thank you for having me. This is really exciting. 30 seconds. Well, I'm from Canada. I've been kind of all over the world doing a crazy life, but that life really took off about 6 years ago. And since then, I've been traveling the world as a performer and a singer and a host and doing a lot of things. And now currently starting to move into more of a motivational, inspirational career path, which is where I met Raluca here and where we're going to launch this little interview.
Thank you. So you are an actor and a singer, you said. How long have you practiced this art?
Yeah, so I've been doing that now. I started studying maybe 6 or 7 years ago. In New York, I studied. And then once I graduated, I worked in New York and the United States for a while. And then I started working for cruise lines. So I've since then, over the last 4 years, traveled to over 60 countries. Very, very lucky to have done that. Very grateful to the amazing experience of working on cruise ships and singing and acting, which has been amazing. So about 6, 7 years total.
Wow. And what was the most interesting part of this life, combining acting, singing, and cruising and seeing all the planet?
Yeah, well, it's obviously the biggest thing is how beautiful the world is. When I'm from a relatively small town in Canada, so growing up, I only had the movies or pictures to see these incredible, picturesque locations. But through cruising, I got to actually go to these places and experience them and stand on the cliff sides and watch the sunsets and see the waterfalls and all the beautiful, beautiful places all over the world. And there's nothing like experiencing it. You can watch a movie or look at a picture all you want, but when you're standing there, it makes all the difference. The beautiful world we live in.
Was it a place in particular that impressed you and touched you deeply?
Yeah, I've got many. Top 3, if I have to pick them.
Okay.
We've going through Australia and New Zealand was really, really special. We did the fjords in New Zealand, which are just unbelievable to go through. It's remarkable to see what nature can do and is on Earth. Another favorite place of mine was there's a town called Ushuaia, which is the southernmost town in the world. It's on the very, very tip of South America. And that was just another beautiful landscape, and it's just an interesting culture down there as well. The third would have to be it's probably a tie between Hawaii and the French Polynesian Islands, like Fiji and those kind of places, all the honeymoon destinations that are, of course, so beautiful and people spend their whole lives trying to get to. So I've been very lucky in what I've seen.
And in the people part of you have mentioned cultures. What was the most astonishing thing about different cultures and different ways of living life, the daily life,
Yeah,
where you were in all those parts of the planet?
yeah, it's amazing. The more you travel and the more people you meet, I find that foundationally, human beings are really all the same. We're all drawn to love and care and family and things like that. And we all kind of fear the same foundational things. But what's so beautiful about traveling is you get to see how people live out their lives, mostly through things like their art or their culture or their music or their language. It's so interesting to see what people bring to life. And beyond just the places I've traveled to, I also, on the ships themselves, we have people working on the ships from all over the world. So I've got to sit down with people who are colleagues of mine and just learn about how they grew up and traditions they had, and interesting ways that they live out their fullest life that I never would have thought of because I just wasn't exposed to it growing up. So it's the biggest piece of advice that I give to anybody is to travel, just because you look at your own life through a different lens and you get to see the rest of the world through a different lens. And it's such a beautiful perspective shift as you go through life.
What was your lens? How was your childhood and your way of growing up?
Yeah, I came from, I mean, it wasn't a small town, it was very isolated. So I'm kind of in the center of Canada, in an area called Northwestern Ontario. And my town, the closest city to me in any direction, is a 6-hour drive. So it's pretty isolated. There's not a lot around us besides trees and forest. So I grew up kind of in an environment of being outdoors and hiking and being on the lake and all these kinds of things, which is beautiful. But you're not exposed to much culture because you're so stuck in this place. So I always knew that I had to pull to travel. Some people like to stay in this town, and it's a beautiful environment, and great place to start a family and raise and start a life. But I had the pull to go. So I immediately moved when I was young, as soon as I could. When I graduated high school, I moved to Toronto, which is kind of Canada's big city. And there I got the bug to travel more. And ever since, I've been trying to push and push and push, bringing me to New York, and then from New York to the rest of the world. And any opportunity I get, I try and travel if I can.
Was your isolated location of your early childhood way of inviting you to discover yourself more?
Yes and no. The reason I say that is because it is nice because you really don't get distracted by everything else. I could imagine living in a big city, there'd be a lot of distractions. Whereas where I grew up, it was very much, we didn't have a lot, so you focused on what you had, which is beautiful. With that said, I think a lot of self-awareness and a lot of self-growth comes through, how can I say, comes through kind of going against something. So you don't get to develop yourself or understand yourself if you're not seeing something that isn't like you, of course. You define yourself by what you're not, right? So when in this small town, everyone is, not to say everyone's the same, but we all have such similar culture and we have such a similar idea, and everyone kind of does similar things. So you never get to explore what else there is. And a lot of people who don't leave a town like mine don't even get the experience of seeing other ways of doing something. So there's a whole lot you can miss out on if you aren't out there contrasting against what you think you are. Because I think that's the only way we're ever going to find out who we are, is by finding out what and who we're not, right? So leaving the city was the biggest exponential growth that I had as a person, for sure.
When did you counter inside your mind the idea of going on a cruise as a career and seeing the whole world?
Yeah, that's a funny story because I actually never did. It was never a thought of mine, ever. I just happened to have graduated and I was looking for work in and around New York, and a friend of mine knew the girl who was casting for a cruise ship. So I thought I would go into the audition and see how it worked out. and I ended up getting the job. So I just was like, okay, I'll try it and see if I like it. And then I ended up falling in love with it. So, and it's been 5 years since. I haven't looked back.
Apart that adventure of of a lifetime of getting to do what you have chosen for yourself, acting and singing and seeing the world, did you had another adventure in your life? Another great adventure?
Yeah, I've had a lot of adventures. I think yeah, I mean that's the biggest one. That's kind of adventures come in all shapes and sizes, I find. One of the biggest adventures, of course, besides this whole part of my life, is when I was younger. When I was 21, I was actually diagnosed with cancer, leukemia. I had, it's called acute lymphoblastic leukemia, and I can't go without saying that that was the biggest adventure of my life. Um, uh, it was something that obviously you never know what's coming. It was a lot. I had about 3 years of treatment through it. So that 21 to kind of 24 time in my life was just a lot of self-discovery, figuring out what you're capable of, finding your resilience, finding beautiful people. A lot of beautiful things came from the difficulty of that kind of adventure. And it seems like a weird way to label it, being an adventure, but I will always look back on it fondly because it changed who I was in a very, very important way.
When were you able to pass the hardship of it and to consider it an adventure as a sort of gift?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a funny, it didn't really happen as one moment. It kind of ebbed and flowed. There were moments while it was happening that I saw it for what it was and how beautiful it was going to be. And then the next day I could be having a terrible time and hated being there. So it kind of did this throughout the whole experience. And then once I finished, it took a long time for me to kind of replant who I was and who I wanted to be. The thing about cancer and the thing about cancer treatment is it kind of strips you of everything, physically and emotionally and almost spiritually in a lot of ways, just because you're so drained from it all. So it took a long time for me to kind of get back on my feet and look in the mirror and say, oh, like there is Isaac. I'm here now. Now we're going to start going. So I would say at least, I mean, it's ongoing. Even now, I'm still having moments of being like, oh yeah, I remember this person that I was. But I would say it took a year or two after I was finished treatment completely for me to really kind of find my soul again and find my ambition. It's a very strange experience going through cancer.
I guess it's a very difficult one too, but at the end, when you found your soul, as you said, was it a transformation from the state that you were before the illness? Was it a
Yeah, well,
blast,
absolutely.
a boost? How
Yeah,
this difference?
Yeah, so when I first got diagnosed, like I said before, I was living life that was good. Don't get me wrong, I was happy and I had a job and whatnot. But there's a difference between being happy and being fulfilled, I think. And in that moment, I wasn't feeling fulfilled. My soul wasn't really in a place it knew it wanted to be. And for a long time leading up to it, I was making decisions, as I mentioned before, based on what I thought should have been the right decision, or what, like my girlfriend at the time, I thought she'd like that decision, or what my parents, I thought they'd like that decision, or any of these multitude of outside voices and things that we have in our lives that push us or pull us. I was very much I was reacting to life, you could say. I wasn't creating my life. I was reacting to the things that were happening around me. And then this happened, and I to this day believe it was a gift from the universe saying, okay, you need to stop for a second and you just need to breathe and sit with yourself and learn how to listen to your own voice. So that is what I worked on during those 3 years, and then a couple of years after I was finished as well. But I had a really interesting moment near the very, very end of my treatment. Obviously, people were starting to ask the question of like, well, what are you going to do now that you're done this treatment and your life is ahead of you? What are you going to do? And immediately your brain starts to go back to like, oh, I need a good job. I need a career that I can be sustained with and that'll make my parents happy. And all these voices start to come back in. And I had a very dear friend of mine in my life at the time, and we had met while I was in treatment. So she was a relatively new friend, and she sat me down one day, and she's the kindest human being on earth, and she's someone who always encourages people to be themselves and to really listen to their inner voice. And she sat down with me one day, and she looked me dead in the eyes, and I'll never forget it. And she was just like, if money was no option, and no one else was talking to you in the whole world, it was just you, and you could dream as big as you want, as crazy as you wanted, what would you do? And I had to actually think. I didn't even let it naturally happen. I had to think about it, and then I started getting in my head about it. And she was like, stop, don't think, just what's the first thing that comes to your heart when you think of whatever you could do. And I'd always performed growing up. I was a singer, and I was in theater and school and stuff. And I thought, well, to be honest, if like I had all the money in the world, nothing mattered, I would love to go to New York and study musical theater and be on Broadway and all those big dreams that I had. But again, that voice in the back of your head says, oh, but that'll never happen. Like, you can't afford it. You don't know anybody in New York. What's going to happen? But she was one of the first people. Of course, my parents were always very encouraging, but she was one of the first people who really saw through and said, you have a dream. Listen to the voice that's there. Now that you've said it out loud, let's figure out how to do it. And at first I was so reluctant, but she pushed, and we figured it out, and we slowly built these ideas, and it built and built and built until somehow, some miracle way, we found a way for me to go down. I auditioned, and I got into a school, and then it just kind of fell forward. And it was the first time in my life I did something 100% because my heart wanted to, and everything just happened by itself. It became easier and easier, and it just started this flow of the universe providing and providing and providing. And ever since then, it's just been an awesome life.
Beautiful domino that you have
Yeah.
deployed there. And now she's traveling with you all over the world, or how are things in a relationship with this way of living?
Yeah, so she was always just a friend of mine. We never had any other relationship. But she's still in the hometown that I grew up in, and she's following her dreams and inspiring people. She's got so many projects on the go all the time that I stay in touch with her quite often. She's a huge inspiration of mine still to this day. So.
Okay, I didn't got this. I thought you were in a relationship as more intimately. So it's hard maybe when you are traveling to have a stable relationship. Can you do that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people do it in many different ways. Some people, they travel together. I've had relationships while I was in the cruise industry, and we would travel together, and we would do different ships and different contracts. Some people have families back home, and they go away for the duration of their contract, and then they'll go home for a couple months, see their family, and then go back to ships. And it's quite an interesting life when you try and balance a relationship into it.
Okay, when you are on stage performing and singing and acting, what do you feel? How it's like?
Ooh, that's a great question. When it's really going well, and I know I'm not in my head about it, I'm not nervous, I'm not thinking about it, it is my favorite place to be. It's so easy, and there's no effort that has to go into it. I find it's one of those flow states in life where time flies by. It'll be a 2-hour show and it'll be over like that. One of my favorite parts about being a performer is watching the audience, because you're just a vessel to pass along this story and pass along these songs and pass along the emotions that come with the story and the music. So as you do your job and it flows through you, being able to see it land on the hearts and the souls and the faces of the people in the audience is my favorite part. And seeing them react to different emotions and seeing them feel something and escape from the rest of the world and just sit in a chair and feel something is absolutely my favorite part of the whole thing. I love it. It's invigorating for me.
It's a reward of itself. Do you have the ability to be inside you acting and observing the public meanwhile, or only at the end? How
yeah, I mean,
do both?
It becomes easier the more you do the same show. I've spoken to a lot of actors who they'll try and get really, really emotionally invested in the roles they do. But it can be, as an actor, if you're doing it full time, it can be draining. It can be a lot for people. So some people have that method, and then other people are able to get to a point where they've rehearsed it so much and they've acted it so much that they can be in the space of the role, but it's not draining of their own person or their own being. So the more you do a role or you do a show, the easier that becomes. So you're still there doing what you know is beautiful and you want to share it with people, but you're able to kind of dissociate yourself with the emotion and the actuality of that role. So sometimes, and I mean, I'll admit there's days where I'm not as conscious as I should be, and I'm thinking about my grocery list as I'm doing something, which is not a good thing. But but you get to a place where you can kind of separate yourself from it. And then yes, I can watch other people on stage more consciously, or I can watch the audience more consciously while still contributing to the show. So.
Do you have moments in your shows when you leave the scripted area and play with the public impromptu, let's say?
It depends on the show. A lot of the shows, no. As they're written, we're supposed to do them. But I've transitioned a little bit while on the cruise ships into hosting things as well. So I don't just do the shows that are scripted. I'll host events or host activities. And that there's a part of that I actually enjoy more, because I get to share the space with the audience. And it's actually kind of what's moved me into speaking, because I like having the availability of the conversation with people. So anything can happen in the spur of the moment, and then there's a beauty to be able to flow with that and see what happens and see what emotions naturally pop up, or see what other people can bring to the entertainment or to the experience. So I'm starting to enjoy that actually more than I am doing the scripted shows myself.
How do you plan to do you already invested yourself professionally and go into the speaking arena at this point, or do you only plan to do it in the future? I didn't catch that.
Yeah, so it's a new adventure for me. And it's one of those things, again, you don't really, well, I didn't think about doing it growing up. I always knew that I had a good connection with people. I really loved having intimate one-on-one moments with people. People would often come to me for advice on things. So I've kind of been that spirit my whole life, but I never thought about it as a professional adventure. Until I started doing performing and hosting, because I started realizing that being on a stage and speaking to a multitude of people had such it was such an incredible opportunity to spread a message of joy or happiness or courage or whatever it was you were spreading. So then the two worlds kind of came together on their own. I was a person who liked people, and I liked inspiring people, and I liked seeing people grow and change. And then I was also an entertainer who loved being on stage and could enjoy speaking on a big level. So those two worlds are starting to do this now for me. So I'm just now turning over the stones, figuring out what there is in the arena of professional speaking.
So you had a moment of fear of a crowd in your past, or you always had that connection, friendly and open and very conversational with a whole bunch of crowd people without
Yeah,
any constraint? How was it before?
yeah, it yeah, it being able to talk to people came naturally to me. That I didn't struggle with that. Where I struggle actually is planned speeches. So if I'm able to go on stage and just talk to people and make it up, I'm great. If I have to go on stage and like say certain things, like a planned talk or a planned speech, that's where I get really scared, which is funny. It's kind of the opposite of what I think most people have. But it's just the commitment to having to stick to something scares me. So it's actually been a lot of work with the courses and the classes I've been taking, is about kind of planning it and then working that into the freedom of the conversation that you can have with people and making sure you hit the points you need to hit. That's all the new learning for me. The being on stage and talking to people and having fun is the easy part.
So what would you take from your acting career and put into your speech to make the conversation more warming or more entertaining? And
Yeah.
what would you change from acting and plan more thoroughly?
Yeah. Um, I mean, the beauty of acting, and especially going through school for acting, is it's very internal. Like when you get a role, you spend so much time kind of picking that role apart. So you're kind of in the career of understanding human nature and why people act the way they do and why they react the way you do. So I found in my professional career as an actor, that I developed a great empathy and sympathy for just human beings. Um, One of the most important lessons I learned in acting school was, if you're ever the villain in a show or a role or whatever, to become really good at being that villain, you have to justify the bad things. Like, no one does a bad thing for no reason. And a lot of time people do bad things for a good reason. So it's an interesting, if you're talking to someone or dealing with someone who is convinced they're not a great person and they can't do these things. My career in acting has allowed me to kind of pull away the layers of a bad thing and see what's causing that from a good place. A lot of good people can make bad decisions. And I think everyone is innately good. So that's really helped me develop a sense of empathy and sympathy in my life, which will always help in being a speaker, just because you can understand where people are coming from, I think, quicker and better. And I've taken on roles that I never, like experiences that I'll never have in my life, but you kind of have to explore what it would be like to have that experience to understand the character that you're in. So that's been huge. Just training of being a person is kind of what acting school is. And then I think the only thing that I wouldn't take with me is just uh, playing a character. Like, the more authentic and the more transparent I am as a human, I think the more people will be able to relate to me, instead of putting on a character, of course. I can just be me with all my positives and all my negatives, and then I think that'll make people feel more comfortable and open up, and then be able to grow from that transparency, I think, is the most important thing.
So when you are preparing an event, let's say, how would you go in this empathy and sympathy with the public and construct your message? Would you adapt?
Yeah, do you mean on the ship or if when I start speaking?
When you start speaking, yes. When you
Yeah.
deliver your message and you prepare it.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm discovering now with my journey in speaking is first I need to develop what my message is really going to be. And then once I develop that and I feel confident about it, then I will find the audience that that message will really speak to. And then once I find that, then I can look at that type of person or people going through that kind of thing, and I can pick apart what they may be feeling or what struggles they may be going through based on their situation, or what they may run into coming up based on what I could imagine happening. So really, I'm doing character work. If I'm speaking to a crowd of teenagers, I have to do the same training I would in acting school. I'd have to pretend I was a teenager, think about how I would feel with these things happening. If I had these influences on me, how would that make me feel? How would it make me react? And then taking that knowledge and empathy and trying to then inspire it to reach greater goods or to do better things or whatever it is that the message is. So that's all I would do is really just look at the people, look at the person I'm speaking to or the type of people I'm speaking to, and just pick it apart and really do my best to speak the language that they would understand.
Finding the common language is such a great way
Yeah.
to connect to your audience. How do you connect as an actor in any other ways that we could maybe steal and put into speaking?
Yeah. I think just kind of what I mentioned, there's a lot of people will watch a movie or they'll watch a play, and I don't think they realize how much time has gone into just working on a character. Like, yes, there's time spent learning the words and the script and learning the songs and all the different things. But really good actors will spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours figuring out just the way that character feels during certain things. And one of the process or the process I find of learning about myself has been accentuated by learning about other people and having sympathy and empathy for people and seeing them struggle through something and then really spending the time, like hours of time, figuring out why it is they're reacting the way they are or what it is that's blocking them or any myriad of things. But spending the time not only on the way it makes you feel, but the way that you could imagine it makes other people feel. Because everyone takes on situations so differently, right? And it's hard, like you said, to find that common language. But spending time in the shoes of another person will ultimately help with that.
So are you able to do that even though you have never had the experience of this individual or of this kind of public when you are an
Yeah, I
actor?
mean,
How do you do it?
yeah, I think it has to do a lot with going back on it. Like, of course, if I'm in a situation and I'm talking to an individual who I've and their situation or their experience is something I've never experienced before, doing your best to be present with them, listening to them as best as you can, because there's two things you can do here. First of all, as I mentioned way back in this interview, I think the foundation, no matter where you're from, no matter what your culture is, I think the foundation of human beings is global. I think, like I said, people want love. They want, like, they love family. They're scared of kind of the same things a lot of the time. Um, So if you can break down what that person is going through in the moment and find the foundational elements that are affecting them, I think that will make a huge difference. And then the other part of that is, once that interaction is finished, stepping away from it and spending time with it afterwards to really pick it apart and say, oh, I've never experienced that type of situation before. What can I learn from it? What can I pull away from it to realize that maybe I could have said things different? Or like, it's all a learning experience from the moment you start. Especially, I'm experiencing this now. The closer you get with people and the more you try to encourage them and inspire them, the more you realize you have to know about them. So it's always going to be a learning curve. I'm sure you could look at people like Lisa Nichols or Tony Robbins, and to this day, even though they've been doing this for years and years and years, they must run into people who have situations they've never heard of before, and they just have to take the time to realize that all people are foundationally similar or the same. And what is it about that particular situation or person that is part of that foundation, and what can we do to build on that? So
What is your biggest quality, Isaac?
my biggest quality, that's an interesting question. I really love people, and I love seeing people succeed. And it's funny that you asked this, because I didn't realize this about me until just recently. I'd always been someone who would kind of like give to someone or encourage someone or help people as best I could to raise them up. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. I just thought it was what people do all my life. And the older I got, the more I realized that's not really a characteristic of everyone. Surprisingly, a lot of people are trying to tear other people down, which is amazing to me. I don't understand it. But in the most recent years, I've realized that may be a more valuable quality that I have than I'm giving credit to. Which again has been another thing that's helped me start to look into, oh, maybe I should do this as a career, is lift people up. Like, imagine if I could get paid to make people happy. It seems like an amazing job. So I hope that would be it if I had to pick one.
And the issue that gives you the most to work with yourself, what is it now?
I kind of touched on it. What I'm struggling with now is the pragmatic work, like the actual textbook work. Like I said before, I'm great at improvising, talking to someone like off the cuff, but for me to sit down at a desk and say, this is going to be my message, I'm going to talk to these people, I'm going to turn it into a talk that has 3 steps that people can implement into their lives. Like, the actual techniques and the breakdowns are the part I'm struggling with. And I think it's only because I haven't become confident enough yet in what my message is going to be. So if I'm sitting down with someone and they tell me something's going on, I will be great at lifting them up given their circumstance. But I can't yet define what it is that people will fly me in to speak on. You know what I mean? Like, I need to find what it is that people say, oh, we need someone to talk like this. I know the guy, it's Isaac. He does that talk. I don't know what that is yet. So I'm still in the process of defining what that is.
Also, your past was so adventurous and so challenging that you must have a very strong message, authentic message inside yourself. Have you tried to deliver it yet in a speech?
Not officially. The courses that I'm currently doing are the things that are bringing that out in me, and I'm starting to do it more and more. I've written out my message and sent it to a bunch of people who I was just like, how does this resonate with you? How do you feel? Like, because this is all a new adventure for me. I've only really committed to the idea of doing this in the last maybe year, maybe 6 months. So it's still, I'm still holding my voice back when I tell people I want to be a motivational speaker. I'm still cautious about who I tell and how I tell them. So I'm still breaking through the shell of this idea. And it'll get there. I'm not worried about it getting there, but I'm just trying not to force it, letting it naturally grow.
It will come naturally, the feeling that it's appropriate and it's who you are.
Yeah, and stuff like this is helping so much just because I get to say it out loud, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that kind of works. I could do this. So, thank you for this.
So now I suppose you're in quarantine also in New York, and it's a totally different way of living than cruising. How challenging is for you, and how your day looks nowadays?
Yeah. So I'm nervous to say this because first of all, I know a lot of people are going through a really hard time, and they're in situations where it's very difficult for them to go through this. But I'm loving it. This is exactly what I needed, because I've had this idea in the back of my head for so long about becoming a speaker and becoming an inspirational speaker of some sort. But my job is just so busy that I haven't had the time to really meditate on it and think about it deeply. So as soon as I got quarantined, I was like, that's it. I'm turning off the world. I'm signing up for classes and I'm committing to this. And it's been exactly what I needed. It really started the spark of what I've been wanting to do for a long time. And it gave me the breath and the space to do that. So I'm very, very fortunate that this has happened, the time when it happened and how it's happened. So yeah, I've been great. I'm very good at quarantine.
So in your day, in your 24 hours, how do you structure your time? And I see a lot of passion in everything you do, no matter that it's acting, singing, traveling, or fighting an illness and winning, or discovering a new way in speaking. How much of your time is into growing yourself in speaking, or into the practical thing in preparing your message? How does your daily schedule looks like?
And this again, I say cautiously only because everyone is experiencing this so differently, and there's never a reason that someone should feel guilty about the way they're spending their days or feeling that they're not accomplishing enough or any of that stuff, because my schedule, though it's very structured on paper, changes daily. Like there are some days I'll look at my calendar and just be like, absolutely not, I'm watching Netflix all day today. And I feel great about it because I just have to. Like there's no way that you can pull yourself down more by feeling guilty about anything. With that said, I've spent a lot of time researching successful people's morning habits and daily habits, and then I've signed up for a bunch of courses. So I've really gone in a lot. The reason I structure my morning so much is because I want to work on my discipline, and that's something that will help me in creating my speeches and my plans and stuff going forward. And I recognize that that's a weakness of mine. So I've been trying to be very disciplined about my mornings, which involve things just like waking up at the same time early every day. I'm up around 6 a.m. every day. And then I'm doing different things like morning meditation every day. I try and do a morning yoga experience every single day. 1 second. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So yeah, I try and do a morning meditation every single day. I do a morning yoga session every day, which is new to me. I've never really done yoga before, but I wanted to do some sort of physical activity in the morning that wasn't really crazy. And then I've signed up for, obviously you know about this, but anyone who's watching may not. Mind Valley is an online school for self-development, and it's one of the best I've ever experienced. So I've signed up for 3 quests through Mind Valley that I'm doing simultaneously. 2 of them are on speaking, and one of them is on brain power with a guy named Jim Quick. So it's been a lot of self-work. I figured I've got the time. This is the only time I'll have when I'm not crazy busy with work or whatever. So I'm going to dive in. So yes, meditations in the morning, a lot of kind of self-spiritual work, reading a lot of great books. And then I do my 3 courses a day. And then I'm making sure to spend a lot of time with family because it's not something I usually get to do. So FaceTiming as many people as I can all day. I've gone back to old friendships that I wasn't used to seeing just to try and have more connection, work on that as well. But otherwise, I just take in the day. Like I again, living without guilt of what you're supposed to do is really important right now. I had a friend, actually, this is a funny story. I had a friend I was talking to who, her and I were talking about the mental health of people and how this can be a really tough time for people with mental health struggles. And she was saying, she's someone who struggles with anxiety quite a bit. And she was saying that the first couple weeks, she had a really hard time because she felt the pressure of online or people doing things and accomplishing things and spending the time wisely, whereas she felt inclined to do very little. It was just her way of coping with everything that was happening. And she was good about it, and she turned off all her stuff and she ignored the pressure of it. And she was just, as a lot of us were, we were lazy for a week straight. We just ate whatever we could, watch Netflix, commit to it. And what she found naturally happened was about a week and a half, 2 weeks in, she woke up one morning feeling great at the time that she wants. She woke up early just naturally, and she woke up feeling inspired to just do stuff. And without feeling the pressure of it, without feeling the need to accomplish something, she ended up just accomplishing things because the body got to a state of wanting to be creative or wanting to do something that had purpose. So I think if a lot of people just let go of what they think they should be doing during this unprecedented time, then they'll find naturally they get into a space of wanting to do things without having to think about it.
Do you have way of inviting maybe a goal or an intent without pressure in your life, or a method for people to desire something and to practical the steps for getting there, but losing the pressure?
Yeah. And this has been something that I've been working on a lot over the last few years because I'm someone who likes to rush things, and I'll try and do as much as I can, as fast as I can to accomplish it. But there's a few different things that I think about constantly, and so much so that I had it written on my wall for quite a long time. The first one's actually a Jim Quick quote, or someone might have said it, but he quoted it, was people grossly overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a month. So I think a lot of people try and go, and they burn themselves out. And then a week in, they're like, oh, this is too hard. Whereas if they patiently spread it over the course of a month or even greater, a year or more, then it's amazing what people can accomplish. The second thing is that I tell myself constantly, and I do this daily because I always want to rush, is the only way to build a wall or to accomplish something is to lay each brick. And if you spend the time to lay each brick perfectly, and that'll take time and it'll take patience and it'll be slow, then by the end of it, you'll have the most exquisite wall. But people try and lay it all down so quick to make the wall show up big and fast. So every day I try and do small little things, just a tiny little, like these courses are only, as you can attest to, they're only 10, 15 minutes long. So we're not spending hours and hours doing self-work. I do a 15-minute meditation. I do a max 20-minute yoga. And then I do these courses and they're all 20-minute bites. So throughout the day, I do an hour of hard work, but over the course of a month, that's so many hours that you've put in to doing it. So I think patience and breath are really important. Whenever you're feeling overwhelmed and you're feeling you need to get somewhere quickly, just have patience and realize that if you took that goal and spread it over the course of a year or two, imagine what you could do and how less stressful it would be.
It's a good piece of advice. And now, completely changing the register, I would challenge you to sing a little bit of something that is very, very close to your heart.
Oh God, I didn't see that coming. Oh God. One of my favorite songs, and I always wanted to try and do this somehow on stage, but I never got the opportunity to. I love that old song, the Frank Sinatra song, Smile, just because it's so simple and it just talks about smiling, even though the world is hard. So I can't believe you're making me sing. This is awful. But yeah, anyone out there who's like having a hard time or knowing that, look up this song, Smile by Frank Sinatra, because it's just the best. Smile, though your heart is aching. Smile, even though it's breaking. If there are clouds in the sky, you'll get by. If you smile through the tears and laughter, smile and maybe thereafter, you'll find that life is quite worthwhile. If you just smile. There you go.
It was quite an original interview. And now, as we reach the end, I challenge you to complete the sentence, me, Isaac, I am, with one word.
Ooh. Me, Isaac, I am brave.
Thank you. You are amazing, and you have accompanied us in so many areas, in emotional way and practical way and strategic way and acting and speaking and winning over illness. It was an incredible interview, and I thank you very much for being here, open and warm. And I invite you, our listener, to take those moments that inspire you and make them part of your lives from now on, and also to click the link and donate an amount of money to the hospital in Romania. Thank you so much, Isaac. I hope to meet you and maybe to share stories about your speaking career from now on.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
We will keep in touch. Thank you so much.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Raluca.
Bye.